Okay, we are doing the unit circle. The unit circle, what does that mean? Well, the unit circle means that the radius of the circle from the center to the edge is 1. The radius is 1. So no matter where I measure this, it's 1. So this is 1 right here, 1 comma 0. This is 0 comma 1. This one's negative 1 comma 0, 0 comma negative 1. Now, the cool thing about the unit circle is that the sine and the cosine are these values. Once you know what the angles are, the sine and the cosine are these values. Now, we learned those exact values back at the very beginning of this chapter on trigonometry. We learned the special triangles, and we learned how to find the sine was exactly 1/2 and the cosine was square root of 3 over 2. Right? No problemo, right? That's what we did whenever we were solving 30 degrees, 45, and 60 degrees on those special triangles. Well, these angles are special because when you find an angle over on this side that has a reference angle that's the same size as that, then it's going to have exactly the same numbers, except over here, the x number is negative and the y value is positive. So if I had an angle that was up here 30, if I had an angle right there at 30 up, what would that be? Well, it would be 30 away from 180, remember? So if my angle was 150, if I had an angle that was my thing is running out of juice. Get a new one. Good idea. Where are the new ones? They're hiding from me. Okay, come back. There we go. So we got 150. If I had an angle that was 150 degrees, now remember that would be over here somewhere, right? Be just like that, 150 degrees. Off that direction, looking just like that. Starts here, goes 90, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150. There it is. How far is it away from 180? It's 30 away. So that means that the sine of 150 is the sine of 30. Why? Because the y values are exactly the same. And that means the cosine of 150 is the opposite of the sine of cosine of 30. Why? Because over here the x value is positive and over here the x value is negative, right? So if I want to know the exact value, since I know 50 is the same thing as 30, it's got the reference angle, then if I know what the cosine of 30 is, then I know that the cosine of 150 is negative square root of 3 divided by 2. I know that for sure. And I know that the sine of 150 is exactly 1/2. Right? Now what if our angle was over here? What if our angle was over here? Let's do one that's, say, 225. 225. How far away is 225 from 180? Because you have to find that reference angle. So let's subtract. That'd be 5. That'd be 45. Hey, 45. So I know this angle right here is 45. I know all the way around is 225. That's what I said. So if I'm looking for the sine of 225, I know that it's going to be down here in this part of the world. Well, what happens over here? The x value and the y value are both negative. Down here in this quadrant, negative, negative, right? So if I know that the sine of 225, if the reference angle is 45, then the sine of 225 has to be the opposite of that. What's that? It's 1 divided by the square root of 2. So that's going to be negative 1 over square root of 2. If I know what 45 is, then I automatically know what 225 is. Why? Because 225 is 45 away from the 180, right? You have to measure back to the x-axis. How far away are you from the x-axis? If you know how far away you are, then you know it's these guys right here. And then, of course, cosine of 225 is going to be cosine, the opposite of the cosine of 45, which is just the same thing. Woo woo, right? No problemo. Let's do one more. Let's do one down here. The unit circle. So let's do over here, let's do one, say we do 300. Okay, 300 degrees. How far away is that from the x-axis? Well, if this is 360 and this one's 300, that'd be 60 away, right? So 60 is the reference angle. The reference angle is 60. Do you know what the sine and cosine is up here? Yes, I do. Cosine is 1/2. Sine is square root of 3 over 2. The x number is always the cosine, right there. The y number is always the sine. So, we got it. So if I wanted to know the cosine of 300, the cosines right here on this side of the world, that's positive. So the cosine of 300 is the same thing as the cosine of 60. Well, I know what that is. That's 1/2. Ta-da! Right? How about if I wanted to know the sine of 300? Well, the sine of 300 is down here in this quadrant. Down here, the y values are negative. So that means the sine of 300 is the same thing as the opposite of the sine of 60. So that would be negative square root of 3 over 2. Right? That's what we got. Yeah, baby. That's how we do it every single time. Now, if you needed to know the tangent is always the sine divided by the cosine. Sine divided by the cosine. So if I do square root of 3, this one right here, divided by this one, believe it or not, let's do it. The tangent of 300 would be the square root of, what am I doing? Square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2, right? Because we know it's the sine divided by the cosine, right? Now when you divide fractions, what are you really supposed to do? You're supposed to multiply by the reciprocal. So let's do that. Multiply by the reciprocal. What happens when you multiply by a reciprocal? This cancels out this. Kaboom! What's the answer? Negative square root of 3. What's the tangent of 300? Oh my goodness. Sine divided by cosine. Check it out. Sine divided by cosine. So, all we have to be able to do on today's homework is that kind of stuff. Bada bing, bada boom. We'll be done. We'll be done.